काम पे लुटाए जा, कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा, खुशी के गीत गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू काम पे लुटाए जा। फिर भी तू न डर, उड़ा के दुश्मनों का सर, जो वतन बढ़ाए जा, तू शेर हिंद आगे बढ़, मरने से फिर भी तू न डर, उड़ा के दुश्मनों का सर, जो वतन बढ़ाए जा, कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा, खुशी के गीत गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू काम पे लुटाए जा। हमें निशान संभाल के, लाल किले पे गाड़ के, लहराए जा लहराए जा, चलो दिली पुकार के, हमें निशान संभाल के, लाल किले पे गाड़ के, लहराए जा लहराए जा, कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा, खुशी के गीत गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू कौम पे लुटाए जा, कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा, खुशी के गीत गाए जा, ये जिंदगी है कौम की, तू कौम पे लुटाए जा।
Welcome viewers to this live session with Sanskriti. I'm Ananya, the host for the evening. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the immortal hero whose life and work continues to inspire generations of Indians. A lot has been said and written about him through books, movies, and television series. On the occasion of his 125th birth anniversary, today we have the privilege to have Shri Chandra Kumar Bose, grandnephew of Netaji and grandson of Shri Sharat Chandra Bose, with us. Mr. Bose is also a political activist and Netaji researcher. Let us get to know about unknown aspects of Netaji's life from one of his family members. Namaskar, Mr. Bose, and welcome to this chat show. We are thankful to have you today with us for an interaction with Indians in Sweden. There is a lot that has been conveyed about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose through different channels. Today, I would ask you some questions which may be unknown for many. And thank you again for being with us today. We have learned...
Good afternoon and good evening, viewers. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. We have learned that while your great-grandfather, Shri Janakinath Bose, was a lawyer serving British, Netaji was a rebel kid of the family to have sympathy for freedom fighters. Also, we have learned that your grandfather, Shri Sharat Chandra Bose, was the closest to him and influenced his thoughts. Today, we would like to go back into his childhood and how your family played a pivotal role in shaping the Netaji we know. Please let us know about the relationship of the two brothers.
See, Janakinath Bose had a very difficult childhood. You see, Janakinath Bose's father, Horonath Bose, and mother Kamini Bose, they could not provide for Janakinath Bose many things that we naturally obtain in our generation. You see, Janakinath Bose used to live in Kodalia Gram, outskirts of Kolkata. It is now known as Subhash Gram. See, this Kodalia Gram was around 15 kilometers away from the Albert School in Goria. Janakinath used to study at the Albert School in Goria, and Harunath, his father, could not provide transport for him. He used to walk to school and walk back. So he used to walk around 30 kilometers a day to reach school and go home. In the evening, when he used to study with the help of a lantern or a candle light. So he had a very difficult childhood, but he grew up to be one of the top lawyers of Cuttack High Court. He was also a government leader. So this was a man who had seen difficult times through his childhood, but he achieved on his own. He was absolutely a self-made man. I will relate a story that I have heard from my father, Omionath Bose. You see, Janakinath Bose, later in life, used to come and stay in our ancestral house at One Woodburn Park in Kolkata. That was Shri Chandra Bose's house. And one day, when my father was downstairs, some people came for asking for money. So normally what happens if such people come, we normally say that, oh, it's not possible, please go away. So my father was a little rude to these people, saying that we cannot help you, you please go away from here. Janakinath Bose, my great-grandfather, saw this from the balcony, and he called my father and very clearly told him, you don't do this, don't repeat this behavior, because you don't know what hunger is. I know. So you should not ill-treat people who are poor. So that was Janakinath Bose. And the way he brought up his children, Sarat Bose and Subhash Bose, you know, later in the history of our freedom struggle, how both these Bose brothers plunged into politics, public life, and freedom movement because they were brought up in a very simple manner. Their motto was, high thinking, but, meager livelihood. They never ever had any luxuries in life. So that is the way they were brought up. So Janakinath Bose was a very successful man, not only in his profession as a government leader, as a lawyer, but he brought up his children with discipline and with certain principles. See, Sarat Bose later in life used to say, what is morally wrong cannot be politically right. But unfortunately, these days, we find that principled politics has taken a back seat. And now I think we need to modify Sarat Bose's saying, now it is what is morally wrong is politically right. So it is unfortunate, but I only hope we are celebrating 125th birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. We would again recall the kind of principled politics both brothers, both Sarat Bose and Subhash Bose stood for. The example that they set for the nation. I think the youth of our country should adopt their ideology of principled politics. And Subhash Bose, he had that Arjun's drishti. he had this commitment and, conviction of fighting for India's freedom. He did not digress at all. So the youth of our country and the world should see the kind of commitment the Bose brothers stood for. Today, whatever career we embark on or whatever we want to achieve, we should be very focused and committed. So this is the message I would like to give to the youth of the world.
That is really nice to know. A lot of things we got to know today about Sri Janakinath Bose, which we were, at least I didn't know about. And it's very nice to get to know about where Netaji comes from. How did a leader like this evolve from the family? It's, of course, the family that teaches the first virtues. So a lot has to play from within the family. And very, very fortunate to hear this from you. We also know that your grandmother, Srimati Bibhavati Bose, was very close to Netaji and stood by many of his initiatives in those times when women were not that always usually at the forefront, but she came out and supported. Please tell us more about her and her relationship with Netaji.
You see, when Subhash Chandra Bose resigned from the ICS,
Hmm.
as you are aware that he stood fourth in the ICS examination, which was an extremely difficult examination to crack. Subhash got only 8 months to study for the ICS examination. The ICS was a 2-year full-time course,
Hmm.
but he sat for the examination after studying only for 8 months, and he stood fourth. Maybe if he would have got entirely 2 years to study, he probably would have stood first. But after qualifying, no one that I know of ever resigned from the ICS. But Subhash Chandra Bose decided to resign from the ICS because he wrote to his father, Janakinath Bose, and to his elder brother, Sarat Chandra Bose, that he cannot serve two masters. He believed that his master was Bharat, India. So he cannot serve another second master, the British Empire. That is why he decided to resign from the ICS. Janakinath Bose was not very happy about it because he wanted his son to have a very good career. He wanted him to do well in his life, have a comfortable life. But Subhash Chandra Bose, if you see his life and times, he always decided to choose the difficult path. He never took the easy way out. Most of us in 21st century, we try to take the easy way out. But I think life has taught us many a lesson that most of the time it is not, correct to take the easy way out. Sometimes you have to take the difficult path to really achieve and perform well in life. So Subhash always took the difficult path. He resigned from the ICS, came back to India in 1921, plunged into politics. But Janakinath Bose was little unhappy. It was Sarat Chandra Bose and Bibhavati Bose who fully supported the decision that Subhash took of resigning from the ICS and plunging into public life and freedom movement. See, Bibhavati Bose always stood as a mentor and always guided Subhash. You see, Subhash used to like good food. Most of us in the Bose family and most Bengalis, we have a weakness for eating, tasty good food. There was a dish, macher pakoda, which Subhash used to like, which Bibhavati Bose used to make with her own hands for Subhash. So these are little things that I have gathered from my father, Amiyanath Bose. You see, my knowledge of the Bose brothers, about the freedom movement, is not from reading any textbooks. Yes, I have read books, but my basic knowledge is from the stories, the actual experience that my father Amiyanath Bose had in the freedom movement. his interaction with his father, Sarat Chandra Bose, and his uncle, Subhash Chandra Bose. These are the experiences that he told us after dinner, after dining. We used to sit, all the entire family members. There was a practice that we always ate together at our Woodburn Park house at 9 o'clock sharp. And after dinner, we used to sit for almost over 2 hours listening to my father's experiences with the Bose brothers, Sarat and Subhash, with Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, who used to also come and stay in a house at Woodburn Park, with Sarojini Naidu, Sardar Patel, and all the stalwarts of the Congress leadership. My father used to tell us about them. Sometimes good things, sometimes certain negative things we have also heard. So that's how my knowledge about the freedom movement and about the Bose brothers I have learned. So the message that I would like to give, that Subhash Chandra Bose, he looked very serious, but he wasn't. He was very friendly with the younger generation, with the youngsters of our family. He used to be disciplined. In fact, as I've said, we used to eat a lot, and there was a relative of ours, one of our ancestors, who used to eat 3 times. He used to eat lunch 3 times. So Subhash had told him that you will only get 2 chapatis for lunch and no having lunch a second time. So he used to discipline the youngsters, but he was also extremely friendly with them. He used to have a discussion with them. So Subhash, his interpersonal relationship with the family was extremely close. He was very close to my father, Amiyanath Bose. In fact, my father had the opportunity of sharing the same bedroom for a period of almost 6 years in our one Woodburn Park house. Subhash used to suffer from insomnia. He had difficulty in sleeping. That is why he used to wake up my father at night. He used to return home at about 12:30 after having his various meetings. Dinner used to be kept on the table. He used to eat that dinner and then wake up my father. And they used to have a conversation till 4 in the morning. Many things about the political scenario of those days he used to relate to my father. And those stories we have also heard from my father, Amiyanath Bose. So that gave me a very, clear picture, a very insider's view regarding the development, the political development, and the freedom movement of that era.
Definitely. It's really great to hear this from you. So much to know more about Netaji, and the more we listen, the more it just inspires us. Your great grandmother has been portrayed in a television series as a strict mother who would punish Subhash for his daring acts for the causes of supporting freedom fighters when he was a child. Mostly, I think, when he lived in Kotak. Please tell us more about how his relationship was with his mother.
Yes, I have heard about this serial. Well, in fact, we did write a letter to the director and producer of the serial. I don't recall my father ever telling us that Vibhavati Bose used to, she was definitely strict. But I don't think she ever scolded Subhash because she was so fond of Subhash. I think it is beyond her to, kind of scold her and rebuke her on for any issue. So this is not correct. I think that the projection or that portrayal of Vibhavati Bose's character was not right. She was extremely loving and extremely, kind of, she used to shelter Subhash a lot, but she had realized that Subhash's mission in life is something different.
Mhm.
It's no ordinary life. Subhash came with a mission, and his mission was the freedom of our country. And that path was an extremely difficult path. It was dangerous. It was no doubt adventurous. Subhash was a very adventurous person. Otherwise, he could not have undertaken this journey that he started on the 17th of January 1941. In the early hours of the morning, he went out of his Elgin Road residence to Gomo. So unless you have a lot of adventure, you cannot really undertake this journey. But of course, he was extremely courageous, because without courage, there is no way he could have, gone from Kolkata to Gomo. From Gomo, he went to Peshawar, from Peshawar to Kabul, from Kabul to Moscow, and Moscow to Berlin. This journey, when British intelligence, British police, they were instructed to assassinate Subhash. He was the only leader of India who had a death warrant on his shoulder. In fact, the British Prime Minister had given clear instructions that Subhash Chandra Bose, the moment he crosses over to Afghanistan, moment he leaves the shores of India, he should be assassinated. But they could not catch him because, again, his commitment, his drishti was like Arjuna of Mahabharata. His warrior instinct was like Maharana Pratap. So he continued the battle. He reached Berlin, and then from Berlin, when he went to Southeast Asia, 90 days submarine journey. It is an impossible journey that he undertook along with his colleague Abid Hassan. Torpedoes were trying to hit his submarine. Almost it came very close twice. This is what the captain of the German submarine has mentioned in his biography. But Subhash went on. See, he had something in him. As you know, he was a very spiritual person. His spiritual guru, he was inspired by the teachings of Ramakrishna Paramahans and Swami Vivekananda. And that gave him the inner strength to continue his battle for India's freedom. So, he was very spiritual. He was also very religious. He used to visit Dakshineshwar Kali temple late at night. He used to meditate. But he had respect for all religions. He believed that one should not mix up religion with politics. So Subhash Chandra Bose, he was an extremely spiritual and religious person, but he believed in one thing. Subhash Bose stood out as a leader because he refused to use religious symbols for political purposes. No other leader of that era could really stand up to this kind of principle. And that is how in the Azad Hind Fauj, if you see, he could establish all communities hailing from all religions as Bharatiya. In the Azad Hind Fauj, there were 60,000 soldiers, but there was not a single Muslim, not a single Hindu, not a single Sikh. Then who were these 60,000 people? They were Bharatiyas. I think this is the relevance of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in 21st century, that in India today, we must establish ourselves as Bharatiyas. We will respect all religion, but religion is our personal matter. It should not interfere with politics and public life. And Netaji showed the path that he could do it.
That is really, really nice to hear. Of course, Netaji's vision was far ahead of his times, and so much he has done which people could not have even thought where his thinking was coming from in those times. When Netaji was under house arrest, as you mentioned, we know that your uncle Shri Shishir Bose helped Netaji to leave. Please tell us more about Shishir Bose and how he and your father and members of his family. We've also heard about your aunt helping him prepare to get into disguise and leave the house while he was still under house arrest. Tell us more about that incident and how did it all evolve?
You see, this journey was meticulously planned, and two persons knew the entire plan: Sarat Chandra Bose and Subhash Chandra Bose. almost 8 members of the family knew about the plan, but they only knew their part. The entire plan was not told to everyone. Like
Okay.
Shishir Bose, of course, he took a very difficult, drive from Kolkata to Gomo, but he was only told about the car journey from Kolkata to Gomo, nothing beyond. Similarly, others in the family, like Bela Pishi, she used to give the food. She only knew her portion, that okay, at this time you have to keep giving the food. Even when Subhash had left the room, she kept giving dinner and then breakfast and lunch, so that police who were kept, under, they were surveyed, the entire building was under surveillance. So the police should not suspect that the food is not being given. So, but the only thing is, the entire plan was known to Sarat Chandra Bose. Others were told, because Subhash realized that if the entire plan is told to all the 8 members, then it may leak out. Because, we have this tendency of talking, and we might gossip, we might tell somebody, we might whisper into somebody's ears, it may leak out. So he wanted a very foolproof method. He wanted this thing to work out. So he told people, but only their portion. But then, when like Ashok Nath Bose, he stayed in Baridi in Ashok Nath Bose's house. He only knew that, okay, Subhash will come here, spend the night here, and then he would go. But where he would go, whether he's heading for Germany, whether he would go to, Peshawar, all that he wouldn't know. He would know that he will take the Delhi and Kalka mail and move on. So this is how he had planned, because it was a very dangerous journey. It was probably, Subhash's, the kind of inspiration he had, the spiritual strength he had. He could continue this journey, because it is, very difficult when you know that British intelligence is closing on and is trying to, arrest you. It is very difficult for your, kind of mental strength to remain and continue the journey. But he could do that. He was so focused on the freedom movement. You see, one thing I must tell you, Subhash Chandra Bose, he resigned from the presidentship of the Congress, not necessarily because he had difference of opinion with Mahatma Gandhi or Nehru. He realized that the Congress leadership will not be able to bring about freedom for our country. You cannot achieve freedom through a non-violent method. Non-violence can never achieve freedom. We have to have an armed struggle. And that armed revolution and struggle cannot be done from within the country. Because the moment any revolution started, the leaders were arrested and put behind bars.
Hmm.
So you have to raise this army outside India, and you have to take the help of your enemy. Enemy's enemy is my friend. This is what he adopted. So who was British Empire's enemy was our friend. And that is how he took the help of Germany and Japan. And this was the only way to fight the British. And later on, we have seen what Clement Attlee told us, and even Lord Mountbatten. My father met Lord Mountbatten in 1976. Amarnath Bose, my elder brother who stays in Hamburg in Germany, also accompanied him. And both Clement Attlee and Louis Mountbatten clearly stated that they left India because of the battle of the Indian National Army, the INA trials, and the efforts of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Otherwise, we would not have attained freedom in 1947. We would have probably taken another 50 years. So this is the thing which Subhash Chandra Bose realized, and he implemented it because he wanted freedom for his nation at the cost of his life, at the cost of his well being, at the cost of 60,000 soldiers of the Azad Hind Force.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bosch. It's really interesting facts to know. We have a question here. So, please tell us how he first met Hitler. So if you could throw some
Yes,
light on this.
certainly. You see, he had to wait for a very long time to meet Hitler. Hitler was not meeting him, but finally he did meet Hitler. But you see, probably Subhash Bose never liked Hitler personally, but he realized that Hitler and Nazi Germany is the only nation who can fight the might of the British Empire. You see, you will have to take the help of a country who can challenge the might of the British Empire. And during the Second World War in the 40s, Adolf Hitler was the only person in Europe who could do that. But you must also realize that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose spoke to Adolf Hitler on his own terms. He did not give in to Hitler. During the discussion, when Hitler was talking to Subhash, Subhash told him very clearly that, Herr Hitler, you have written a book, a biography, Mein Kampf. Many of you might have read Hitler's biography, Mein Kampf. And in that book, Mein Kampf, Hitler has written very insulting and derogatory remarks about fellow Indians. So Subhash Chandra Bose had the courage to tell Hitler right on his face when he was having the discussion that, Herr Hitler, Mr. Hitler, you are not aware of the history and heritage and culture of India. First, you must understand the history, heritage, and culture of India. And then only you can comment and write about fellow Indians. You delete the paragraph that you have written about Indians because you know nothing about Bharat. You know nothing about India. So Hitler realized that here was a man who was a patriot. Here he was a man who was a true nationalist. He could challenge me on my own soil. See, Hitler needed just one bullet to eliminate Subhash Chandra Bose. Hitler's army officers and generals did not have the guts to challenge him. No one had any guts to refute what Hitler stated, but Subhash Chandra Bose did. And he told them that you have written wrong things about Indians. And the other thing that Subhash Bose did, sitting in Germany, when Germany was trying to attack Soviet Russia, Subhash Chandra Bose, sitting in Berlin, made a public statement that the German aggression of Russia would not be tolerated and accepted by India. He could say this because he was so confident about himself. It was Hitler who arranged the submarine for him. Without Hitler's help, Subhash Chandra Bose could not have reached Southeast Asia. 90-day submarine journey was arranged by Hitler. It was a German U-boat that was given to him. Hitler realized that this man has to go to Southeast Asia. This man is a true warrior who wants to fight for his country's freedom. So I must help him. And it was Hitler who advised him that raising an army from Germany and attacking British Empire in India would be extremely difficult. It is too far. So you must go to Southeast Asia. Raise your army from Southeast Asia and then attack the British Empire in India. There you would succeed. And that's exactly what happened. You see, the Azad Hind Fauj lost the battle, but won the war. Because the impact of the Azad Hind Fauj created revolt in the British armed forces. You see, in the British armed forces, there were 12 lakh soldiers. Out of 12 lakh, only 40,000 were British. All the rest were Bharatiyas, Indians. The Bharatiya component of the British armed forces revolted against the British Empire. And that is why the entire army collapsed. And Subhash Bose had actually imagined that this is going to happen, and exactly the same thing happened, and Britain got freedom in 1947. So Hitler gave him full support to go to Southeast Asia and continue the battle for India's freedom. Without Hitler's active participation and support, Subhash Bose could not have reached Southeast Asia.
Absolutely. Very interesting fact to get to know more about the aspect on how he met Hitler. Thank you so much. We know how he went now so far from you. But what was the impact of the family when Netaji left India to never return again?
Well, I think Sarad Bose knew that Subhash had planned this journey, but of course he never knew that he would never come back, because I think the entire family, including Sarat Chandra Bose, they all wanted Subhash to return to India. And it's not only the Bose family. I think the people of our country, the people of India, I think they all wanted Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to return to India after independence. But that did not happen. We are still not very sure what happened after 18th August 1945. We are still trying to find out the truth based on evidence. Research is continuing. Declassification process is still on. We hope one day we would find out the truth. But I think it is more important to know about the life and times of Subhash Chandra Bose, how he lived. A lot of people want to know. We also would like to know how he died. But I think more importantly is how he lived and what he lived for, what he stood for. He stood for communal harmony. He stood for unity. He actually practiced the concept of India. India is, we are a diverse nation, and India is unity through diversity. Netaji actually implemented this and practiced it. So I think this is the memory, in memory of Subhash Chandra Bose. We really want to give respect to him. We must understand what he lived for and what he stood for. And he always practiced what he preached. You see, these days we are also in public life. Most of the time we make many statements and many commitments, but we fail to practice what we preach. Subhash Chandra Bose always practiced what he preached. I think this is another relevance of Netaji that I would like to convey to the political fraternity of our nation and the world, that if we respect Subhash Bose, if we want to really follow his ideals, then before we make a statement, we must realize the statement that we are making, and we must practice what we preach to the nation. So this is the essence of Subhash Bose's ideology.
Absolutely. We have a question here coming up. Still, there is controversy about Netaji's death. As all know, Anuj Thar has done a lot of research and written a book of Netaji. Can you throw some light? I believe you already have answered partly the question, but anything if you would like to add to it.
See, on the 23rd of January 2016, the NDA government under the leadership of Narendra Modi ji started the process of declassification of Netaji files. For 70 years, these files were kept suppressed, locked up in vaults. I'm not aware why, but these files have been declassified. Almost over 800 files have been declassified. But unfortunately, these files could not really unravel the mystery of Netaji's disappearance. So what we have suggested to the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, that a special investigative team must be formed, because you need to give ownership to a team to resolve this, resolve this mystery. I hope SIT would be formed in the next 2 to 3 months. And the first step that we should take, you see, Anita Bospa, Netaji's only daughter, who resides in Germany, in Augsburg near Munich, has written to the Honorable Prime Minister just 3 months back that the so-called ashes which are kept at the Renkoji temple in Japan, if a DNA test can be done, you see, only a scientific approach can resolve this issue. So we need to find out. There's a lot of advancement in the DNA testing as of now. What would not have been done 20 years back may be possible now. As you know, dinosaur skeleton, 7,000, 10,000 years back, DNA test is being done. And they are able to identify the age of these remains. So if we can do a DNA test of the remains kept at Renkoji, some kind of evidence can be procured. And Japan has stated that they have 3 files. Still, they are having 3 classified files on Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Now, these 3 files need to be declassified and examine what evidence is there in these files. The other question that is being raised, whether Intelligence Bureau files kept with the government of India, have they been declassified? So unless we take a holistic approach, this mystery cannot be resolved. Now, 3 commission of inquiries have already been held. The first one, as you know, is the Shahnawaz Committee. Second one is Khosla Commission. And third is the Justice Mukherjee Commission. 2 commissions have stated that Netaji perished in the air crash on the 18th of August, 1945. But Justice Mukherjee, of course, stated that there was no air crash. Now, we need to have a final inquiry by the special investigative team who needs to analyze the entire data which is there available and come to a logical conclusion. But this logical conclusion can only be arrived at if we complete the cycle of the DNA test of the Renkoji ashes and procure the 3 files which are kept in Japan, which are still classified. I only hope that the NDA government, under the leadership of Narendra Modi ji, they are celebrating, the whole nation, we are celebrating the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji. I hope during this year, we would be able to take this mystery to its logical conclusion.
We hope so too. It's a topic that everyone wants to know more about. There has been so many theories and movies, as I said, documentaries, newspaper articles, but everyone wants to know. But as you rightly said, we should celebrate his life and his principles and what he stood for. And that is coming to that. Tell us more about your work as an Netaji researcher, and what was it like to grow up in the family and coming to know that you have been into the family where a legend was born?
Well, definitely, some of us who are born into the Bose family, we are certainly privileged. But I am a very ordinary person. And I don't wish to live under the shadow of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. I have my own contribution. I have my own, career. I definitely want to contribute to public life, to social work. But yes, my politics is entirely based on the inclusive ideology of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Irrespective of which party I am associated with or which platform I am associated with, my politics is entirely based on Subhash Bose's ideology. But I would like to state that just being a member of the Bose family is certainly an honor, but all people who are Bharatiyas, Subhash Chandra Bose himself has told this to my father, Amiyanath Bose, that the entire nation, the 135 crore population of India and Bharatiyas who live abroad, in Scandinavian countries, in Europe, in the US, each and every Indian across the world is a family member of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. This is not my word. These are words of Netaji himself. He had clearly told my father. In fact, my father jokingly had said that when India attains freedom, you would be the prime minister of our country. And we would be all ministers in your cabinet. My father had jokingly told Subhash. You know what Subhash told him? That you certainly would be cabinet ministers, provided you have the charisma and caliber to become the minister. Being my relative, if you don't have the capability, you will not be a peon also in my government. So this is what Subhash had said. He would not have promoted any family member unless the family member had the capability to contribute to the nation. So he was very clear. He was very, down to earth person. He was completely, totally unbiased. He had a very, very clear thinking as to what the country would look like after 100 years after independence. You see, Subhash Chandra Bose, when he was the Congress president in 1938, he had formed the first planning committee of India. Today we talk about planning, but the first planning committee of India was established by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And he was such an inclusive person, he made Mr. Nehru the chairperson of the planning committee. They had differences of opinion, but he believed in collective work. He believed in teamwork. So he gave the responsibility to Mr. Nehru. And the planning committee, if you see the kind of clear thinking and policy that he has stated, you can see his planning committee, the details of the planning committee in Madhu Dandavate's paper. See, Madhu Dandavate, when he was in parliament, he had produced a paper. It is available on the internet. Subhash Chandra Bose's planning committee by Madhu Dandavate. There you would see that what kind of visionary Subhash Chandra Bose was. You see, it was not only about political freedom. Subhash Bose wanted political, economic, and social freedom for our nation. We have attained political freedom, but we are still a far cry away for achieving economic and social freedom. We are still striving for it, but we need to see Netaji's planning committee, what he had thought, how India would be going through in the 21st century. His thoughts are still so relevant. It is amazing. No other leader of that era is relevant to that extent. There were many who fought for freedom, many who gave up their lives for freedom. But how relevant are they in 21st century? So Subhash Bose is so relevant. That is something amazing that the youth of India should study Subhash Chandra Bose. You see, you must read two books written by Subhash Bose himself. Number one is The Indian Pilgrim, and two is The Indian Struggle. You must read these two seminal books that Subhash Chandra Bose himself has written. This would give you a clear thinking of what Subhash Bose stood for and what he wanted independent India to be.
Absolutely. Some, as you mentioned about how he planned and organized, there were some traces of this that was depicted in one of the television series. Again, going back to it, which I followed actually because I wanted to know much more about Netaji's life, where his work together with Deshbandhu Chittaranjan. As part of the Kolkata, I think the municipality that they started working for at that time. It was still under the British, of course, but his planning and the vision that he had and the way, of course, it was depicted, I don't know if you agree to it or not, but we really got to know more about how much he thought about from all aspects of health, sanitation, basic amenities of life that should be provided for a decent living, that is. And
Right. You see, another national icon, a great leader who we have forgotten these days. It is very, very unfortunate. In fact, Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das was Subhash Chandra Bose's political guru. Mahatma Gandhi, in fact, advised Subhash that you go to Kolkata and you work under the guidance of Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das. And Subhash Bose did exactly that. You see, his spiritual guru was Swami Vivekananda, and his political guru was Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das. And under his guidance, he became the executive officer, the chief executive officer of the Kolkata Municipal Corporation when Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das was the mayor.
Hmm.
And people say that Subhash Bose was a very big leader, a national icon. But do you know, as the CEO of Kolkata Municipal Corporation, he used to stand on the streets of Kolkata and do development work. He
Hmm.
used to supervise about sanitation, cleaning the streets of Kolkata, working for people who were, poverty stricken. He thought about education. He believed that education should be given to all. Everyone should get exposure to education. So his, commitment to work for the people who were not so fortunate, we have seen during his days of Kolkata Municipal Corporation.
Hmm.
And later on, of course, he became the mayor of Kolkata. As mayor of Kolkata, he ensured that Kolkata city had the basic infrastructure, sanitation, and all basic amenities are provided, drinking water for people. All these things he did. His basic purpose was to serve the nation. His basic purpose was to serve the people of our country. And he started that as municipal corporation mayor. So we must also understand he became the supreme commander of the Azad Hind Fauj. He became the first prime minister of undivided India. That is all fine. But he started his life right from the bottom. He started his life right from the streets of Kolkata. And he rose to be the Prime Minister of undivided India. So we need to understand. Today, a lot of leaders, they feel it is below their dignity to go and work at the booth level, to go and work at the ward level. But Subhash Chandra Bose started his work right from the booth and ward level and rose to be the first Prime Minister of undivided India. That was Subhash Chandra Bose.
Absolutely. It's always so nice to hear so much more about Netaji. His life and work only inspires us to think more about the country, about what we can individually do for the country, no matter where we live. We have a question coming up here. Do you think the work done on Netaji in Indian filmography or on OTT platforms have depicted Netaji's stories with most possible authenticity? Has Mr. Chandrabose been approached for the R&D of these films or web series? What's your view on the importance of filmography on Netaji's life and work?
Very good question, very valid question. You see, a lot of films have been made, both commercial and documentary, but there are distortions. You see, when you are making a feature film, commercial film, you need to appeal to your audience, to your target segment. And sometimes you need to digress and distort the story and the history to make it more appealing to the audience. Now, that should not be done in the case of national heroes, national icons like Subhash Chandra Bose. Time has come that we must make an authentic documentary, authentic feature film on Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. I think the central government, the NDA government, there is a central committee which has been formed. I am a privileged member of that committee. I have given a proposal
Hmm.
that we must make an authentic, proper film on the life and times of Subhash Chandra Bose. I think Government of India would accept this proposal and take up this project. And I only hope that in the next 1 year or so, we would be able to put all the facts together and all the authentic story together and make a final film on Subhash Chandra Bose. Because otherwise, today we know about Subhash because we have heard it from our ancestors, I have heard from my father, but our next generation and future generations would really not know unless we have it documented, unless we produce a proper film depicting the true story of the Azad Hind Fauj, the true history of India's freedom struggle. In fact, right from 1857 onwards, right from the Sepoy uprising of Mangal Pandey to 1947, many gaps have been noticed. Many contribution of people like Shahid Bhagat Singh, Khudiram Bose, Binoy Badol Dinesh, and many others who have not been really there. They have been obliterated from the pages of history. So I think Netaji's story should lead the path. Netaji's true history should be a benchmark for all the other contribution of other revolutionaries and freedom fighters to be documented and produced for future generations to learn and understand.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bush. This is really the need of the day that we convey this to the future generations. And this also was one of my questions, that what would be your message to the generation that's growing up outside India, in Sweden and in elsewhere in the world? How do you think Netaji's ideals can be carried forward to this generation living and growing outside?
You see, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was a world icon, but he was Bengali at heart. He was a true Bengali at heart. You see, he was born in Cuttack. He was not born in Bengal. He was born in Cuttack in Odisha. His political career started in Bengal. His education was in Odisha. He started in Odisha. Then he moved to Kolkata. Then he moved to England. He studied at Cambridge University. He studied philosophy. So Netaji, his entire schooling, college life, background, he studied international warfare. He studied people and leaders across the globe. He studied Marx, he studied Lenin, he studied Garibaldi, he studied Washington, George Washington, he studied the entire, world leaders, what they stood for, their ideology. But he imbibed his own ideology, his Indian way of socialism. He believed that the political fraternity and the political life of India must be based on the history, heritage, and culture of India. He did not want any imported ideology to be thrusted on the Indian people. So Subhash Chandra Bose's, ideology was of a very pragmatic nature. A lot of people say that he was a leftist. A lot of people say that he was also, leaning towards the right. But he was neither left nor right. He was a pragmatist. He believed what is practical for the nation is his ideology. And that is how he could take the help of both Hitler and Japan to fight for India's freedom. So we need to understand Subhash Bose, because unless you understand his basic ideology, it is very difficult to appreciate him. So you must read his own writings. You must read certain other books. There is a book which was actually compiled by my father, Amionath Bose, but he could not publish it during his lifetime. That was being published now. The Bose Brothers and Indian Independence, an Insider's View. My sister Madhuri Bose has compiled the book. It is available. It is published by Sage Publishers. This would give a thinking, an insight into Netaji's worldview, Netaji's ideology. He was greatly also influenced by Kavi Guru Rabindranath Tagore, who called him Deshanayak. And Mahatma Gandhi, we must also understand that certainly there was differences of opinion. His approach to freedom was completely different. Subhash Bose wanted an armed struggle, whereas Mahatma Gandhi wanted a non-violent struggle. But the respect that both the leaders had for each other is something which we must learn. The youth must understand. You know, it was Subhash Chandra Bose who addressed Mahatma Gandhi as the father of the nation for the first time when he was leading the Azad Hind Fauj towards the Imphal border, Imphal frontier. He, over the Azad Hind radio, he announced that Mahatma Gandhi, he addressed him, the father of the nation, you give us the inspiration to fight for India's freedom. And similarly, it was Mahatma Gandhi who told Subhash Chandra Bose that he is prince among patriots, patriot of patriots. So this is a thing that we need to learn. Today, there might be political opponents, but we must also try to respect our political opponents because our goal is the same. You see, Mahatma Gandhi's goal was also freedom of our nation. Their methods were different. Netaji's goal was also freedom of the nation. So they respect each other. So but today, our political opponents, the kind of abusive language which is being used, Netaji and Mahatma Gandhi would have never accepted this. You must have respect for your opponents, which they respected. So today, our goal is the same. We might be in different political parties, but our goal is welfare of our people. Our goal is to work for the downtrodden. Our goal is to maintain equality for all. Our goal is to see that women get equal rights. Subhash Chandra Bose in the Azad Hind Fauj gave equal rights to women to fight for India's freedom. He established the Rani of Jhansi regiment in the 40s. No army had given this status to women. It was the Azad Hind Fauj, the Indian National Army, where Rani of Jhansi regiment was formed, and women had the same opportunity like men. So we should respect women today. We should give them the equal opportunity. It is only recently that in the Indian Army, women have been commissioned as officers. It took 70 long years to do it. Netaji had done it in early 40s. So he was a man beyond his times. He was a visionary beyond his times. So if we have to respect him, Subhash Chandra Bose, his inclusive ideology, he united all nations, all communities. He united all caste and creed. He did not believe in this caste system. Today, the problems that we face in India is due to this divisive politics. We cannot do divisive politics. In fact, I had sent a message on the 23rd of January that we are celebrating Netaji's birth anniversary on 23rd of January 2021. From this day, let us stop divisive politics. Let us do inclusive politics. Let us unite all communities. Let us unite all religions and establish ourselves as Bharatiyas. If we do this, then we would really give respect to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the liberator of India.
Absolutely. Such relevant words, and a leader beyond his times, a vision that he had for India is still something that we need to achieve. We are still far away from that goal that Netaji had. It's amazing listening to you, Mr. Bose, and very emotional as well. It's a great pleasure that you have been with us, and all our viewers got the opportunity to listen to you and ask those questions. Would like to let our viewers know that from Sanskriti, as part of this celebrations, next Saturday we will have a quiz competition that is targeted mostly towards the young that are growing up in Sweden to participate. So they must, we have expected that they would listen to this interview, get to know more about Netaji, and then participate in the quiz, where we would of course encourage them to come online and take the quiz with one of our quiz masters. It's great talking to you, and thank you so much for your time today. We
Thank you.
only wish that this will go on, and we will always be more and more inspired by Netaji and his life. Thank you so much, viewers, for being with us. Thank you, Mr. Bosch, again.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I hope I have been able to send a message to the viewers in Sweden and rest of the world, a message that Subhash Bose, who was a world icon, a world leader, but never ever did he forget his roots. He kept his roots in him. He studied world economics, he studied world leaders, but he was a very proud Indian. He was a proud Bharatiya, he was a proud Bengali. You see, people from Odisha claims that he was born in Cuttack, so he's Odia. People in Bengal say that he started his political career in Bengal, so he's a Bengali. People from South, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, they say that we were all, our ancestors were in the Indian National Army. So Subhash is a South Indian. People from Haryana, Punjab, and the north, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, they say we were fighting for him in the Indian National Army. People from northeastern states, the Gurkhas, we know about Ram Singh Thakure, who composed the Kadam Kadam Badhaye Ja. So people from Northeast say that no, he was part of us, he was Northeast. But Subhash Bose was neither from Odisha nor from Bengal, neither from the north of India or south. He was a Bharatiya in spirit and he practiced it. So let us today, wherever we are, whichever part of the world we are, we should not forget our roots. We should not be regional. We should keep our identity. But we are all Bharatiyas first, then we are Bengalis, or we are from Odisha or North or wherever. We may be living in Sweden, but living in Sweden, we must not forget our roots, which Subhash Bose never forgot. And that is how he could continue the battle for India's freedom. That is why he had clearly said that हम जिंदा रहे व ना रहे, ये अहम मुद्दा नहीं है. अहम मुद्दा है कि भारत आजाद होंगे. So this is was his motto, that whether I am alive or not is not important. What is important is India would be free. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Namaskar, Mr. Bosch, again, and thank you again for this lovely interview. As Sanskriti also tries to follow these principles of India first and bring on board, the team itself is of all Indians, and where we don't have any place for regionalism or any religious identity. We are all Indians first, especially living abroad. This is the first identity that we have, that we are Indians. And it is absolute pleasure that we could bring you on this platform and talk, let you mention the same across to our viewers. This is so much in line with what we stand for, and so happy that we could actually live with this principle that Netaji stood for. Thank you so much, Mr. Bosch, again, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ananya, and thank you, Sanskriti. It's very nice talking to all of you, and all the best. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.